Hey, read through the word. Today is March 5th, and today's lesson is called Speak to the Rock. First, let's handle the shirt. Okay, so I have lots, y'all know my love of t-shirts with a message. So I have lots of Bible verse shirts that you see me here, and I think I've worn some of my teacher shirts on some of my read through the word lessons. But this is my shirt, the Oxford Comma Society, in defense and preservation of tradition, comma, form, comma, and clarity. The comma before the and is called the Oxford comma. And for a while, traditionally it has been used in grammar. It is needed for exactly what the shirt says, for clarity. And for years it went out of vogue. It was not used. Let's think. 2000s? And then people realized you couldn't understand half of what people wrote, so it came back into usage and is being taught where they teach grammar today. And so I'm a huge fan of the Oxford comma. So most people who are grammar nerds like me, they have an opinion. I would say even more than an opinion. They have a stance on the Oxford comma. And I am pro Oxford comma. So I have my Oxford Comma Society shirt. So it had nothing to do with the lesson, but I had it on and I thought I'll wear my Oxford comma shirt. I have quite a few cute English teacher shirts that I love. So this is one of them. All right, we are in Numbers chapter 20, verses 1 through 13. Remember the other day when we talked about my throat? I still have it, drainage, and I've not been sleeping good the past couple of nights. The coughing goes crazy at night. So we'll get there. So I still have the tickle. I'm so sorry. In the first month of the year, the whole community of Israel arrived at the wilderness of Zin and camped at Kadesh. Where they were there, Miriam died and was buried. There was no water for the people to drink at that place, so they rebelled, is their usual, against Moses and Aaron. The people blamed Moses and said, "If only we had died in the Lord's presence with our brothers. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into this wilderness to die, along with our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink." Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle, where they fell face down on the ground. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, "You and Aaron must take the staff and assemble the entire community. As the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and I will pour out its water. You will provide enough water from the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock." So Moses did as he was told. He took the staff from the place where it was kept before the Lord, and he and Aaron summoned the people to come and gather at the rock. "Listen, you rebels," he shouted. Listen to what he says. "Must we bring you water from this rock?" And then Moses raised his hand and he struck the rock twice with the staff, and the water gushed out. So the entire community and their livestock drank their fill. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel, you will not lead them into the land I am giving them." This place was known as the waters of Meribah, which means arguing, because there the people of Israel argued with the Lord, and there he demonstrated his holiness among them. Okay, so This is where it happens. Moses will not enter the promised land. And this is it. This is why. Now, I know I have had people in classes over the years talk to me about how harsh this is. It is not. And we're going to look at why this is, well, it's God's judgment. God is good, and God is right, and God is just, and He's holy. Whatever His judgment is right. And we're going to look at what's actually really going on with Moses here, and why this is really such a big deal. Okay, so Moses is the leader of the Exodus. He is the one who stood before Pharaoh, and he is the one that God used to lead His people out of bondage from slavery. Moses was entrusted with the law. Moses is the one who built the tabernacle. Even Jesus tells us in John 3 that the work of Moses is a foreshadowing of His own work as Messiah. We see that. And Moses is also listed in Hebrews 11 as in the hall of faith. But and Moses was, God, spoiler in case you don't know, in Deuteronomy we're going to get that God Himself will bury Moses. But all of the stuff that Moses did, and he is not allowed to enter into the promised land. And we'll look at that when we get into Deuteronomy, about what God does with Moses there. But Moses was not, before Moses dies, in Deuteronomy 32, 51 through 52, it says this, that Moses was not, God tells him, it's because you broke faith with me in the wilderness with the Israelites, and you did not uphold my holiness. Because of that, you can see the promised land, but you will not enter into that. So right here in Numbers chapter 20, we are nearing the end of the wilderness wandering. And it's one of those things that as you're reading through the book of Numbers, like you go from one paragraph to the next, and 40 years have flown by. And we see that here they are, the same complaints they had at the beginning, the first generation that came out of Egypt, the same generation that's going to go into the promised land, will all have the same thing. So here we have another grumbling about water. You're like, didn't they grumble about water before? Yes, that was their parents. So here you have, there's no water, and everybody's turning against Moses and Aaron. They're like, take us back to Egypt. The same thing that had happened earlier. But what you see is they go before God, Moses and Aaron, and God tells them to go to the rock and speak to the rock. But Moses gets angry, and Moses strikes the rock twice. And God then has to deal with Moses. Here's the thing to remember. Moses is the mediator. No, remember when we were back at the giving of the law at Mount Sinai? Moses said, you can, the people were so scared of God. They said, Moses, you just do it. You talk to him for us. And then, you tell us what he says, and we'll go from there. So Moses is the mediator. Moses represents their connection to God. So when Moses stands before the people, he is supposed to present the holiness of God. He's supposed to show them everything about God. And here's the thing. He lessens who God is. He does not present the holiness of God to the people. Because here's what Moses does. Moses, first, He disobeys a direct command from God. God commanded Moses to speak to the rock. Instead, he struck the rock with his staff. And so earlier in Exodus, God had told him to strike the rock with the staff. But you know what? We've come 40 years now. And God's instructions are different here. God wants Moses to trust him. Moses didn't need to use force. All he needed to say was speak to the rock and the water would come forth. He disobeyed God. Second thing, Moses takes credit for bringing the water. Did you notice the word we? He meant he and Aaron. You mean we need to bring you water? Moses didn't bring no water. None of the time. He didn't do that. No. That was God. And so here it is. You had this opportunity to show this miracle from God before the people, and you claim it for yourself. Look what we did. God cannot let that go. It has to be punished. He cannot lessen the holiness of God. And another thing that I'm going to make a connection to, that remember, foreshadow, flashback. Connection to the New Testament here. In 1 Corinthians 10:4, the water-giving rock is used as a symbol of Christ. So the rock was struck in Exodus 17, just like struck once. Just like Jesus dies once for all, Hebrews 7 will tell us. Moses speaking to the rock in Numbers 20 was supposed to be obedience by faith. But what he does is he destroys the biblical typology, and it's basically like Jesus the picture is Jesus as crucified again. But that's not true. So you see, God brings judgment because of disobedience, because of pride, and because of misrepresentation of Christ. He's barred from entering the promised land. But I want you to notice this. Moses does not say, but God, I didn't mean to. He doesn't argue back. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't say, but God, you're wrong. He knows he did wrong and he is right to receive judgment. And we see that. And you know what? He doesn't say, okay, I'm done, God. I'm not going to be your man anymore. He continues until he dies to lead those people and walk by faith. So much for us to learn there. But here's the thing. God's holiness and God's compassion, God's judgment and God's mercy. We see here, anytime you see the judgment of God, you will also see his mercy side by side. Always you'll see that. You need to start looking for it. Because that's what you see here. It's because God will lead Moses. At the end of Deuteronomy, he leads him up to the top of Mount Nebo and lets him view all of the promised land. And then Moses dies, and God himself will bury him. God buries him. His failure to obey at the rock did not break his relationship with God. God continued to use him, and God showed his compassion and mercy towards him. God is always that way. We'll see that with David later. Remember the whole census and numbers thing? And David's going to get in trouble for that when we get to the kingdom period. And God offers him his own judgment. He's like, I'll give you 3 choices. Which do you want? And he says, Lord, I will take your judgment, the direct hand of God, because if you let me fall into the hand of man, man does not have mercy, but God has mercy. And we see that here in the life of Moses. With God's judgment is always God's mercy. So as you read, look for that. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.